Let's go to those in power, at least one of them, and that is New South Wales Liberal Party Senator Hollie Hughes, and a happy new year to you, Hollie.
And to you, Smithy, welcome to 2024.
Yeah, does it feel good? Are you optimistic, or are you a little bit hesitant given all the elections that are occurring around the world?
Look, I think it's going to be a really big year. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we sort of every year kind of say this is going to be a big year, but I think this is going to be a truly enormous year to not only Australia, but all around the world. We're going to see big changes and big opportunities in some ways, but certainly big challenges ahead. So I think it's going to be a really critical year, the next 12 months.
Now, I had to have a good chuckle when I heard this today. Having done nothing to ease the cost of living on Australians, the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, as I just indicated to Natalia there, warned the supermarket giants to lower their prices. Gee whiz, this will scare the pants off them, won't it?
Look, it just shows how completely out of touch, but also how full of hot air this government is. I mean, the reality is they announced over 100 days ago that they were going to have some review into the supermarkets. It's taken 100 days for them to announce Craig Everson. I mean, it's just astounding how long they take to actually implement anything.
Yeah.
And to Natalia's point, it's a really interesting place to start because it is a political place to start. It has absolutely nothing to do with the real cost of living pressures that most families are facing. And, you know, I heard Natalia talk about insurance and the financial sector, but for me, it's the energy prices that are causing the most damage to a lot of families and are going up exponentially. I mean, I get my bill and I quite often post it just on my socials because it'll say to me, your bill's up 73% higher than this one last year. These are extraordinary increases. And the thing about energy and power is that it then feeds back to all the businesses. So it's not just you and I getting our housing bills that, you know, heating and cooling our houses or putting the dryer or running the TV. It's actually the businesses that require that power to produce goods and services and deliver them to us. And those are increasing the costs across the board. So, you know, groceries are, we all buy them all the time. There's also a lot of choice in that market. There's the two big players, but there's also a lot of independent, smaller stores. You've got things like Aldi that are starting to move, Costco. So there are different choices for people in that grocery space. There's very little choice. If you're not one of those households that's hooked up to renewables with some sort of battery storage, you're just getting absolutely slaughtered by your energy bill.
Smashed to smithereens. And everyone I meet is talking about it. Everyone I meet. You know, the other thing about supermarket prices, though, and I caught up with someone in northern New South Wales when we were away. She was a ginger grower. And she was at a table near the beach, and we got talking. And she had just shut down her ginger growing business in Queensland. She decided to retire early because she simply couldn't make any money. She said she sold her top line ginger at $2.50 a kilo to Woolies.
Yeah.
But she was forced to pay for the freight to get the ginger down to the warehouses in Sydney and Melbourne. And then Woolies goes on to sell that same ginger in their supermarkets for $27 per kilo. You know, robbers don't need to wear balaclavas, do they, Hollie?
Look, that ginger example is extraordinary. But, you know, if we look at what's happening to lamb prices, I mean, I would have thought Australians at the moment should be paying, you know, maybe $10-12 a kilo for lamb in the supermarket because the Labor parties, they've brought in a ban on live sheep export out of Western Australia, which is going to absolutely decimate the sheep industry. It's had an impact right across the country. Sheep farmers are selling their sheep and lambs at just ridiculous prices. They can't, they're not making any money on them. The abattoir costs, all of those things are just, there is a glut of what's happened with the lamb market. And as we approach Australia Day, we know we always have the big lamb commercials and we're going to eat lamb. Well, most people can't afford lamb because it's about $40, $50, $60 a kilo at some cuts in the supermarket. So, you know, it's across the board that they're gouging farmers. And the fact that farmers are being forced to pay transport costs when we know this is just such a significant part of the supply chain. And again, this government, up to its union mates, doing more and more to push those owner-operators of trucks out of the market so that it's all, the big union drivers and big companies that are going to take over everything and put those costs up again. So, we just can't seem to get anything through to this government that every decision they make is making it worse for those that grow our food, but for all of us that need to consume it.
And they seem to have no idea how to alleviate some of that pain. Nev, one of our followers, Hollie, says on the chat box, make no mistake, Woolies and Coles are vile, disgusting duopoly with the same shareholders. What a great example of what I said, vile and disgusting. But I noticed that Independent Senator David Pocock asked a poll question on X today, and I wonder whether this has got any legs, Hollie. Do you think the big supermarkets should have to display the price they're paying the farmer for the meat, milk and vegetables alongside the price they're charging customers? 67%, the last time I looked, said yes. How would this work?
Look, how would it work? That's the question. I think there's a lot of complexity there. And those sorts of polls, whilst they get you a lovely high number and everyone would like to know that, putting things into reality, things cost different amounts of money to get to different stores in different locations. So, it's all lovely in theory. But back to your Neve, I think you said just put a message through. I just saw that Woolworths is no longer going to sell Australia Day merchandise for this year. Like, seriously, that's enough for me not to shop at Woolies anymore.
You're not wrong.
I mean, the fact that they're now, we had enough with the referendum and the way that these big corporates came in trying to dictate what should be happening in society, let alone what they're overcharging everyone. But Woolworths, now saying we're not going to sell Australian Day merchandise. Leave the country then. If you're not proud of it, go away.
Go away.
Gouging Australians if you're not going to support what are very important things to Australian families and people.
Hollie, the usual very vocal Indigenous suspects are urging the Labor government in Australia to abandon all ties with Israel. Now, I still maintain, and we can argue about this if you want, that Israel didn't need to kill as many Palestinians as they have, but these Indigenous identities have completely and conveniently forgotten about October 7.
Look, it's just extraordinary. And these people have obviously also forgotten the referendum on October 14th because there were a number of Jewish groups that were very, very strong supporters of the Yes campaign. And it's really interesting to talk to Jewish groups now. When you think about the October 7 attacks, when the pogrom occurred, it was actually focused not only on that music festival, but in a number of kibbutzes. Now, a kibbutz is basically sort of in some ways a socialist communist utopia with the way they operate. This is the left wing of Judaism lives in these kibbutzes. And so these are like the left now attacking the left wing of the Jewish population and the Israeli population, which is not all Jewish. But the fact that these Jewish groups, particularly those that do have quite a strong left-wing bent, supported Indigenous Australians in this Yes campaign, to then be dropped and turned against so quickly is just, I know they have just been absolutely left dumbfounded but devastated at how they thought they were doing the right thing, supporting these exact Indigenous Australians who were pushing for the Yes campaign. Look, I will exclude Lydia from that. She was on the no. But the rest of them that were very, very strong Yes campaigners were supported by a number of these Jewish groups who are now feeling unsafe in their own communities because of the actions of people like this. I think it's disgusting. I don't think you and I need to go back over the conflict again, but, I'm embarrassed that there's been such a lack of leadership at the federal level when it comes to the rise in anti-Semitism and the fact that, Australia is now on a watch list for Israelis to come to Australia because it's now seen as somewhere not safe for them. That is horrific.
Horrific.
Well, and Israel, let's not forget, is the only democracy in that part of the world, has been a long-term friend of ours. And in fact, they are a liberal democracy that is a very secular society. I can tell you, if you went into Gaza, there's not much secular about that. And the Queers for Palestine and a lot of these left-wing groups, including women who would not have the right to be educated anymore, would find themselves not very welcome if they took themselves off into Gaza, yet they come here and speak ideologically. And quite frankly, I think it's disgusting.
Now, this is an odd one in terms of new Australians. The number of aspiring Australians passing our citizenship test has plunged. Can you work out why and whether these people, when they fail that kind of test, are still gaining citizenship?
Well, the thing is, though, this Australian citizenship test includes things about Australian values and what it means to become Australian and to be an Australian. Have a look around. What does it mean anymore? Do you support Australia Day? No, you don't. Do you support Israel and democracies around the world? No, you don't. We've just had a government focused on a referendum that did nothing but divide us. This is a government who is looking for identity issues to continue to divide us. So no wonder if you came to this country as a new migrant, struggling not only to learn a language, but to work out what Australian values are, when you've got in the imams in some of these mosques saying the most hateful things about Jewish Australians and how they should, not be safe in our country. How would you know what an Australian value is, depending on where you landed? So I'm not surprised. And I feel that this government has an awful lot to answer for in such a short period of time. They seem to have moved the Australian culture as quickly as they can away from recognising our history, being a proud country who has been, they talk about the US as a melting pot. I think we have been an extraordinary melting pot. Everyone has come from somewhere else aside from our Indigenous Australians, and even most of those have heritage from somewhere else across the world as part of their background. And now we are being divided. We are being pushed in different directions. If you support traditional things, if you support the monarchy, if you support Australia Day, if you support keeping us all together as one under the Constitution, you're nothing but pilloried at the moment. But that's the basis of our Australian values. So I think no wonder people are failing, because how could you find them?
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. They're not doing enough to say to people, this is what we stand for, this is what you need to follow. Bring your culture, bring your desire to cook certain cuisine, bring aspects of your own culture into ours, but understand ours closely, because that's what we'd like to bring you into under the same umbrella. Now, some of your National and Liberal Party MPs and your colleagues are urging your boss, Peter Dutton, to drop any carbon dioxide emission targets for 2035. It's a brave stance, considering how much and how many of the public, members of the public, have swallowed the fake green evangelism, Hollie.
Well, look, I've seen that article today. It hasn't come to party room, so I haven't actually had a discussion. There was, I think, Matt Canavan and Bridget McKenzie might have been quoted. They're certainly members of the National Party, but it hasn't come before us, so I haven't heard the views of colleagues on this to definitively say that yes, this is fact. I mean, outrageous. I know that perhaps a newspaper story isn't based on 100% fact. But, there are already claims by agencies that have been tasked with reaching the 43% by 2035 that Bowen has in place, or it was 2030 that Bowen was, that we're never going to get there. It's not going to happen.
Of course not.
The rest of the world knows it's not going to happen, and we refuse to embrace nuclear. We've now got Bowen endorsing Plibersek, saying no to the Port of Hastings with their offshore wind turbine. February 6th, if people aren't aware, there's going to be a massive rally in Canberra against offshore wind. So, this is just a fallacy in the way that this is a carry-on. And what is the repercussions if we don't get there? You see, it's an arbitrary number.
Correct.
And the fact of the matter is, a lot of the countries who are the greatest emitters aren't even signatories to this stuff. And we are 1%. We emit 1% of global emissions.
Correct.
But we could shut everything off and go live in the trees, and we'd make zippo difference. So, I mean, seriously, everyone might want to make as much political hay here, but at the end of the day, until people appreciate this is a global, if this is going to be tackled, it's got to be attacked at a global level. It's got to be attacked by everybody at the same thing, that we should not tie our arm behind our back just to moralise to the rest of the world whilst destroying our economy and our way of life. We've just lost Alcoa over in WA, 1,000 jobs. I mean, what are these guys doing? I mean, they are literally destroying our country in front of our eyes.
So true.
So that Albo can, parade around on the world stage. And Chris Bowen, for God's sake, he did a welcome to country in Dubai. I mean, is this guy just a joke of epic proportions?
He's woke writ large, that bloke. He's just a pain. Now, I just want to mention one of the other good things to come out of the Voice referendum outcome is the fact that it's obviously scared off the Prime Minister from going down a similar referendum route on the Republic. That seems to have been shelved, according to what we read today.
Oh, he's such a conviction politician, isn't he? He's so convicted by what he believes in. He doesn't win the referendum on the voice, so that's an Indigenous issue, not his referendum. He's got a, minister for the Republic that it was definitely going to be part of their second term agenda.
What Thistlethwaite going to do now?
I mean, this guy has absolutely nothing to offer the Australian people except some sort of weather vane, ridiculous speak that it just means nothing, says nothing, stands for nothing, will deliver nothing. But I'll tell you what, Smithy, I am so looking forward to the King and Queen coming to Australia. I am a monarchist, but let me tell you, I will be trampled when they appear in Parliament to address the Parliament. I will be trampled by all those members of the Republican movement as they try to get up the front. They will be fawning and carrying on. Absolutely take my word for it. They will be pathetic.
We've seen it before. They'll do it again.
Oh, they'll do it again. It will actually be hilarious. I think just bring the popcorn and watch Albanese's nose touch the floor when he's announced.
I look forward to that day. We'll dissect the vision bit by bit between ourselves. We can't wait for that. Hollie Hughes, fabulous. Thank you for kicking us off, and all the very best for 2024 to you and your family.
You too. See you, Smithy.
Thank you very much, Senator Hollie Hughes, on the program. And as she said earlier about Woolworths, can you believe this? It broke about an hour ago. Woolies has confirmed its Australia Day merchandise has been dumped from stores across the nation and will no longer be sold. So obviously Woolies is embarrassed about the fact that we as Australians celebrate Australia Day on the 26th of January, which of course was the day that in 1788 that we had the first fleet come into Farm Cove. This was the establishment of white meeting black, black meeting white, which in the early stages was very much meant to be a melding of the ways. There was no conflict. There were no guns drawn as we got onto the shore. There was no history that tabulates that, none at all. But, of course, that's Invasion Day, and that's the day that we should be ashamed of. Well, that's the day that has developed Australia as a first world nation in a very, very short space of time, has allowed people to live another 50 years longer than what they would have 250 years ago, has given us first world wealth and comfort and accommodation like nothing like second and third world people around the world. We should be lucky we were settled by the British and not others who took out many, many Indigenous peoples in other continents. But no, we've got to be ashamed of it. So that's exactly what Woolworths have done. If they are ashamed of having Australia Day on January 26, I am ashamed of walking into a Woolworths store. And that is the last time that I will do that in my lifetime. Bet on it.